Did you know that one of the most puzzling, striking works of art, a commanding statue with centuries of hidden history behind its fearsome face, is directly across the street from a KFC?
Between 7,000 and 10,000 years old, the Great Sphinx of Giza has long been considered one of the world's most important and mysterious wonders. This video intends to delve more deeply into the mystery of the Sphinx.
The Sphinx is believed to have been commissioned by Pharaoh Khafre, also known as Khafre, Khafren, and Chephren, the fourth king of the fourth dynasty from about 2575 BCE to about 2465 BCE, and built during his reign around 2800 BCE. The head of the creature bears his likeness.
The Great Sphinx of Giza is both the earliest and the most renowned example of the mythical Sphinx in art. There are no earlier mentions of the creature in Egyptian lore. It has been theorized that there either are none, or that prior mention had been sanctified or forbidden. The Sphinx was a creature rooted in both Greek and Egyptian mythology. The ancient Greek creature, called Sphinx by the earliest Greek author to mention it, had a different backstory, and came later on in history than the Egyptian Sphinx. The Sphinx of Egyptian mythology had the body of a lioness, the wings of a strong bird of flight, usually an eagle or similar fowl, and the head of a human, usually female.
The Greek Sphinx legend tells of a powerful, destructive monster that had settled itself near the ancient city of Thebes, preventing travelers from entering the city by posing an impossible riddle given to it by the Muses and killing the pilgrims once they failed to answer correctly. Finally, Oedipus, a tragic hero of Greek legend, put a stop to her reign of terror. Known for his great wisdom and promised the hand of a princess if he should succeed, he interpreted the answer to the riddle. What goes on 4 legs at dawn, 2 legs at noon, and 3 legs in the evening?
His response, man, who, as a baby, crawls on 4 legs, then walks on 2 legs as an adult, and in old age walks with a cane as his 3rd leg, drove the creature to immediately commit suicide by dashing itself against a rock, and Oedipus was crowned king.
Egyptian legends and Greek lore differ in their tellings of the being's history, but the Egyptian story, The Prince and the Sphinx, details the first unearthing of the creature from its sandy prison. It has been preserved for posterity by archives like Ancient Egypt, a Mythology, and is as follows.
There once was a prince in Egypt called Thutmose, who was a son of Pharaoh Amenhotep, and the grandson of Thutmose III, who succeeded the great queen Hatshepsut. He had many brothers and half-brothers, and because he was the pharaoh's favorite son, they were forever plotting against him. Usually, these plots were to make Pharaoh think that Thutmose was unworthy or unsuitable to succeed him. Sometimes they were attempts to make the people or the priests believe that Thutmose was cruel or extravagant or did not honor the gods, and so would make a bad ruler of Egypt. But once or twice, the plots were aimed at his very life. All this made Thutmose troubled and unhappy. He spent less and less of his time at Thebes or Memphis with Pharaoh's court, and more frequently rode on expeditions into Upper Egypt or across the desert to the great 7 oases. And even when Pharaoh commanded his presence, or his position demanded that he must attend some great festival, he would slip away whenever he could with a few trusted followers, or even alone and in disguise, to hunt on the edge of the desert. Thutmose was skilled in all manly exercises. He was a bowman who could plant arrow after arrow in the center of the target. He was a skilled charioteer, and his horses were faster than the wind. Sometimes he would course antelopes for miles across the sandy stretches of desert. At others, he would seek out the savage lions among the rocks far up above the banks of the Nile.
One day, when the court was in residence at Memphis for the great festival of Ra at Heliopolis, a few miles further down the Nile, Thutmose escaped from all the pomp and pageantry to hunt on the edge of the desert. He took with him only 2 servants, and he drove his own chariot up the steep road past Saqqara, where the great step pyramid of Djoser stands, and away through the scrub and stunted trees, where the cultivated land by the Nile faded into stony waste and the sketches of sand and rock of the great Libyan desert. They set off at the first glimmer of dawn, so that they might have as much time as possible before the great heat of midday, and they coursed the gazelle northwards over the desert for many miles parallel to the Nile, but some miles away from it. By the time the sun grew too hot for hunting, Thutmose and his 2 followers had reached a point not very far away from the great pyramids of Giza, which the pharaohs and the 4th dynasty had built over 1,200 years before. They stopped to rest under some palm trees, but presently Thutmose, desiring to be alone and wishing to make his prayer to the great god Harmachis, entered his chariot and drove away over the desert, bidding his servants wait for him. Away sped Thutmose, for the sand was firm and smooth, and at last he drew near to the 3 pyramids of Khufu, Khafra, and Menkaura, towering up towards the sky, the burning sun of midday flashing on their golden peaks and glittering down their polished sides like ladders of light leading up to the boat of Ra as it sailed across the sky. Thutmose gazed in awe at these man-made mountains of stone, but most of all, his attention was caught by a gigantic head and neck of stone that rose out of the sand between the greatest of the pyramids and a nearly buried mortuary temple of huge squared stone blocks that stood on either side of the stone causeway leading from the distant Nile behind him right to the foot of the 2nd pyramid, that of the pharaoh Khafra. This was a colossal carving of Harmachis, the god of the rising sun, in the form of a lion with the head of a pharaoh of Egypt, the form he had taken when he became the hunter of the followers of Set. Khafra had caused the Sphinx to be carved out of an outcrop of solid rock that happened to rise above the sand near the processional causeway leading from the Nile to his great pyramid, and he had bidden his sculptor shape the head and face of Harmachis in the likeness of his own.
During the long centuries since Khafra had been laid to rest in his pyramid, the sands of the desert had blown against the Sphinx until it was almost buried. Thutmose could see no more than its head and shoulders, and a little ridge in the desert to mark the line of its back. For a long while he stood looking up into the majestic face of the Sphinx, crowned with the royal crown of Egypt that had the cobra's head on its brow and which held in place the folds of embroidered linen which kept the sun from head and neck. Only here the folds were of stone, and only the head of the serpent fitted onto the carved rock was of gold. The noonday sun beat mercilessly down upon Thutmose as he gazed up at the Sphinx and prayed to Harmachis for help in all his troubles. Suddenly, it seemed to him that the great stone image began to stir. It heaved and struggled as if trying in vain to throw off the sand which buried its body and paws, and the eyes were no longer carved stone inlaid with lapis lazuli, but shone with life and vision as they looked down upon him. Then the Sphinx spoke to him in a great voice, and yet kindly, as a father speaks to his son. "Look upon me, Thutmose, Prince of Egypt, and know that I am Harmachis, your father, the father of all pharaohs of the upper and lower lands. It rests with you to become pharaoh indeed, and wear upon your head the double crown of south and north. It rests with you whether or not you sit upon the throne of Egypt, and whether the peoples of the world come and kneel before you in homage. If you indeed become pharaoh, whatever is produced by the 2 lands shall be yours, together with a tribute from all the countries of the world. Besides all this, long years of life, health, and strength shall be yours. Thutmose, my face is turned toward you. My heart inclines to you to bring you good things. Your spirit shall be wrapped up in mine. But see how the sand has closed in round me on every side. It smothers me. It holds me down. It hides me from your eyes. Promise me that you will do all that a good son should do for his father. Prove to me that you are indeed my son and will help me. Draw near to me, and I will be with you always. I will guide you and make you great." Then, as Thutmose stepped forward, the sun seemed to shine from the eyes of Harmachis the Sphinx so brightly that they dazzled him, and the world went black and spun around him, so that he fell insensible on the sand. When he recovered, the sun was sinking towards the summit of Khafra's pyramid, and the shadow of the Sphinx lay over him. Slowly he rose to his feet, and the vision that he had seen came rushing back into his mind as he gazed at the great shape half hidden in the sand, which was already turning pink and purple in the evening light. "Harmachis, my father," he cried, "I call upon you and all the gods of Egypt to bear witness to my oath. If I become pharaoh, the first act of my reign shall be to free this, your image, from the sand and build a shrine to you and set it in a stone telling in the sacred writing of Khem of your command and how I fulfilled it." Then Thutmose turned to seek his chariot, and a moment later his servants, who had been anxiously searching for him, came riding up. Thutmose rode back to Memphis, and from that day all went well with him. Very soon Amenhotep the pharaoh proclaimed him publicly as heir to the throne, and not very long afterwards Thutmose did indeed become king of Egypt, one of her greatest kings.
Just 150 years ago, 3,230 years after Thutmose IV became pharaoh of Egypt, the Sphinx, again buried to the neck in sand, was dug out by an early archaeologist. Between its paws, he found the remains of a shrine in which stood a red granite tablet 14 feet high. Inscribed on it in hieroglyphs was the whole story of the prince and the Sphinx. The tablet also tells us that it was set there in fulfillment of his vow by Pharaoh Thutmose IV in the 3rd month of the 1st year of his reign, after he had cleared away all the sand which hid from sight Harmachis, the great Sphinx that had been made in the days of Khafra, when the world was young.
So, why would a king commission the building of such a fearsome creature and have his face placed upon its visage? There are a few hypotheses as to why the Sphinx was created. One of the ideas is that the Sphinx was an ancient Egyptian god who guarded the temples and tombs of the kings of Egypt. The great Sphinx may have been built to protect the pyramids of ancient Egypt.
Some believe that the statue was built simply to commemorate Pharaoh Khafre. Others refute that theory, saying that the face is disproportionate to the rest of its body, and that the ancient Egyptians, long lauded as masters of proportion, had originally crafted the masterpiece with a different head, and it was replaced by a jealous Khafre.
Another hypothesis is that lion bird humans are really cool, and who wouldn't want a statue of one? Khafre may simply have wanted to look totally rad.
The Sphinx was carved out of one single piece of limestone, left over from the stone quarry used to build the Great Pyramids not long before. At 66 feet tall and 240 feet long, the monument is massive. There is no information as to how long it took the Sphinx to be created. It is one of the longest surviving statues in history. It has lasted so long because the Sphinx has been buried under sand for most of its existence, every now and then getting unearthed and restored several times. But there are several attributes of the statue that have been lost over the years.
We know that the Sphinx was originally created in color. The Sphinx in its original form also had a beard and a nose. Some historians believe that the nose was lost because an Egyptian man was angry to the gods and did not calm the flooding that they were struggling with. It has also been said that the nose is gone because of some cannon fire damage at the fall of Napoleon. But sketches that were created prior to the Napoleon era in 1737 AD show the missing nose, disproving this theory. The Sphinx's beard is believed to have just fallen off, and a large portion of it, about 1/13 of its original size, lies in the British Museum in in London, England.
There are a lot of mysteries involved in this statue, and many unanswered questions because it has been here for so long. While we have posed some hypotheses regarding the origin of the monument and have researched the available factual evidence, we can only provide conjecture as to the true meaning of its existence.
That's a wrap, yo! Ah!
Absolutely.